Harry Texter lived a quiet life in a secluded house nestled at the base of towering mountains, where dense forests met an endless blue sky. The small town nearby barely knew him, as Harry had chosen isolation after the devastating loss of his family a few years earlier. These mountains, with their serene beauty and untouched wilderness, offered him the solace he desperately sought. His days were filled with simple, calming routines that allowed him to reconnect with nature and find moments of fleeting peace. Every morning, Harry would rise with the sun, letting the melodies of birds and the soft whispers of wind through the pines serve as his alarm clock. The tranquility of his life revolved around long walks through the forest, fishing in the crystal-clear rivers that wound through the landscape, and marveling at the infinite expanse of stars that adorned the night sky. Yet, as peaceful as his days were, the nights often brought a different kind of silence, one filled with sorrow and loneliness that echoed through his heart. One early morning, as a gentle mist still clung to the treetops, Harry stepped out onto his wooden porch. A steaming cup of coffee warmed his hands as the crisp mountain air invigorated his senses. He cherished these moments, where it felt like time paused just for him. As he sipped his coffee, taking in the serene beauty of his surroundings, the stillness was abruptly interrupted by the sound of powerful wings cutting through the air. Harry's gaze shot upwards, and his breath caught in his throat. A massive eagle descended gracefully and landed just a few meters from his porch. The bird was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its wings spanned more than 2 meters, and its feathers shimmered in the soft morning light with hues of gold and brown. Its piercing eyes seemed to radiate intelligence and strength, holding Harry's attention in an almost hypnotic way. His heart raced, torn between awe and a twinge of fear. For a moment, he remained frozen, unable to look away from the majestic creature. The eagle, in turn, held its ground, staring directly at him with an intensity that seemed to pierce through to his very soul. In that gaze, Harry felt something more than just the presence of a wild animal. It was as though the bird carried with it an ancient wisdom, a message he couldn't yet decipher. Gradually, his initial fear gave way to curiosity and concern. Looking closer, Harry noticed that one of the eagle's wings hung at an awkward angle. Dried blood stained its magnificent feathers, and the bird appeared weak and weary, as though it had fought a great battle to make it to this place. Compassion surged through Harry, overtaking any lingering apprehension. He knew he couldn't turn his back on the injured creature. Placing his coffee mug on the porch railing, Harry took a cautious step forward. He raised his hands slightly, palms open, trying to convey that he meant no harm. The eagle didn't flinch but continued to watch him with its unyielding gaze. Harry spoke softly, his voice low and steady, though he wasn't sure if the bird could understand his words. It was an instinctive attempt to bridge the gap between them. "It's okay," he murmured. "I'm here to help." The eagle remained still, its regal posture unwavering despite its apparent pain. Harry's movements were deliberate and slow as he closed the distance between them. Every step was accompanied by whispered reassurances, though his heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, the connection between man and nature hanging delicately in the balance. When he was just a few feet away, Harry crouched down to appear less imposing. He could now see the full extent of the bird's injury, a deep wound on its wing, likely inflicted by a predator or perhaps a mishap during flight. The eagle's breathing was labored, and its eyes, though still fierce, revealed exhaustion. Harry felt a surge of determination to do whatever he could to save this magnificent creature. Moving with care, Harry reached out to the eagle. He knew the risk of being struck by its powerful beak or talons, but the need to help overpowered his fear. To his astonishment, the eagle didn't resist. It remained still, allowing him to gently inspect the injured wing. Harry marveled at the bird's trust in him, a mere human, and silently vowed not to let it down. "Let's get you fixed up," he said softly, rising to his feet. Harry carried the eagle inside his home, where he carefully prepared a makeshift bed out of soft blankets in the corner of his living room. He rummaged through his supplies, finding antiseptic and bandages he had once used for his own minor injuries during his wilderness outings. As he cleaned and dressed the eagle's wound, the bird remained calm, its piercing eyes following his every movement. It seemed to understand that Harry's intentions were pure. Over the next few days, Harry tended to the eagle with unwavering dedication. He fed it scraps of fish and ensured it had water. Slowly, the bird's strength began to return. In those quiet moments of care, Harry felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. The eagle's presence filled the void of loneliness, its silent companionship a balm for his aching heart. What began as an unexpected encounter soon became a profound bond between man and bird, both finding healing in each other's company. In helping the injured eagle, Harry discovered something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The eagle's gaze remained locked on the mountains, its sharp eyes filled with urgency. Every so often, it tried to flap its injured wing, but each attempt ended in pain, accompanied by a soft, heart-wrenching cry. Harry watched the bird closely, sensing that it was trying to communicate something important. Following the bird's gaze, he looked toward the distant mountains. It was as though the eagle's focus and anxiety pointed to something beyond the horizon, a silent plea for help. The wind began to pick up, carrying with it a chill and faint, indistinct sounds from the direction of the peaks. Harry stood there, uncertain but determined. He didn't know what lay ahead, but it was clear that the bird needed urgent assistance. Trusting his instincts, he made a decision. He rushed into his house, grabbed his jacket, and packed a sturdy backpack with essentials: a first aid kit, water, food, and a flashlight. A strange sense of purpose coursed through him, a feeling that this journey wasn't just for the eagle, it was for something much greater. The eagle began to lead the way, moving slowly but purposefully. It occasionally turned its head, ensuring Harry was following. They entered the dense forest, where towering trees created a canopy that filtered sunlight into delicate streams of light. The forest floor was soft with moss, and the air was thick with the earthy scent of pine. Harry felt the rare tranquility as he started the trek, but the path quickly grew more challenging. The trail narrowed, winding its way through rugged terrain. He had to climb over fallen trees, navigate around deep ravines, and wade through icy streams. Each step demanded more effort as the journey stretched on. The eagle, despite its injury, pressed forward with a fierce determination that inspired Harry. Yet it was clear that the bird was in pain. It would occasionally pause, letting out a low, mournful cry as it rested briefly. Harry felt a pang of empathy every time the bird struggled, its resilience urging him not to falter. After a grueling stretch, they emerged into an open meadow. The view was breathtaking. The mountains rose majestically against the horizon, their peaks dusted with snow. Harry barely had time to take in the scenery before noticing dark clouds gathering above. The sky signaled an impending storm, and the wind began to howl, carrying a biting chill. Still, the eagle pushed forward, now leading them toward the rocky cliffs ahead. The trail became steeper and more perilous. Rocks loosened under Harry's boots, threatening to send him tumbling down into the ravines below. His legs ached and sweat soaked his back despite the cold wind. Several times, he slipped on the wet stones, narrowly avoiding falls that could have been fatal. Yet the eagle's unwavering persistence gave him strength. Harry realized he wasn't just following the bird, he was being led by its courage. As the path narrowed even further, Harry found himself pressed against sheer rock faces, the roaring of a river below reminding him of the precariousness of every step. The trail was so tight that one wrong move could send him plummeting. His heart pounded in his chest, fear gnawing at his resolve. But the thought of what lay ahead, the possibility that someone or something needed his help, kept him going. Finally, after hours of treacherous climbing, they reached the base of a towering cliff. The eagle let out a long, piercing cry that echoed through the mountains, its tone laced with desperation. Harry followed the bird's gaze upward and saw, perched high on the sheer rock face, a large nest. It was unmistakably the eagle's, and from the cries that came from above, it was clear that the nest held something precious. Harry's breath caught in his throat as he realized the gravity of the situation. The eagle had led him here to save its family. He could hear faint chirping from the nest, likely chicks in distress. The realization filled him with both urgency and dread. The nest was impossibly high, tucked precariously on a narrow ledge. Getting to it would be the most dangerous part of the journey. He glanced at the eagle, which was now pacing anxiously near the base of the cliff, its eyes fixed on the nest above. Harry felt a surge of responsibility. He couldn't turn back now. He dug into his backpack, pulling out a length of rope he had packed just in case. With trembling hands, he prepared himself for the climb. The storm clouds above began to rumble, and gusts of wind whipped against his face, but he couldn't let fear stop him. Harry took a deep breath and began his ascent. Every muscle in his body strained as he clung to the slippery rock, the jagged edges cutting into his hands. The roar of the river below grew louder with every meter he climbed, a constant reminder of the peril. His heart pounded as he inched closer to the nest, his focus narrowing to the task at hand. Finally, he reached the ledge. Peering into the nest, he saw two small eaglets huddled together, their tiny bodies trembling. Relief washed over him, but the challenge was far from over. As lightning streaked across the sky, Harry carefully secured the eaglets in his jacket and began the harrowing descent, knowing he had to deliver them to safety before the storm overtook them all. The faint chirps drifting from the nest above stirred something deep in Harry's heart. Each sound was a plea for help, tugging at his sense of compassion. He squinted upward and realized that the nest held hungry, freezing eaglets. Without intervention, they wouldn't survive. A pang of pity tightened his chest, but the steep, jagged cliff loomed before him, its danger undeniable. Harry scanned the area for a way to reach the nest and noticed a narrow, precarious path snaking upward. It was treacherous, but it was his only option. Determined, Harry set off. The ascent was grueling from the start. He clung tightly to every ledge and rocky outcrop, each handhold feeling less secure than the last. The cold wind bit at his face, growing fiercer with every passing moment as if trying to knock him off balance. His boots slipped on the slick surface of the rocks, and his legs trembled under the strain of the climb. Fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve, but the thought of those fragile lives depending on him pushed him forward. At one point, a stone beneath his foot crumbled without warning. Harry's balance wavered, and for a heart-stopping moment, he felt himself plummeting. Instinctively, he grabbed at a nearby ledge, his fingers clutching the freezing rock with all the strength he could muster. His heart pounded, and his breath came in ragged gasps as he steadied himself. Fear coursed through him, but retreat was not an option. Summoning his courage, he continued, each step more cautious than the last. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Harry reached the nest. The sight before him nearly broke his heart. 3 tiny eaglets huddled together, their fragile bodies shivering with cold and their faint chirps barely audible. They were so helpless, so vulnerable, that tears welled up in his eyes. Slowly, he reached out and carefully wrapped them in his jacket, creating a cocoon of warmth around their trembling forms. One of the chicks opened its eyes and met his gaze, and in that moment, Harry felt an extraordinary bond, a connection that transcended words or species. The descent was no less perilous. With his arms occupied cradling the eaglets, Harry's grip on the rocks was tenuous at best. The wind howled relentlessly, and the wet surfaces made every step treacherous. His hands grew numb from the cold, and his footing faltered more than once. Yet, through sheer determination and focus, he made it back to solid ground. Relief flooded him as he reached safety. The eagle, which had been watching from below, emitted a series of joyful cries. It approached Harry cautiously, its piercing eyes softening with gratitude. Harry felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Looking at the eagle, he understood the weight of its unspoken plea. It couldn't care for its chicks while its wing was injured. Harry resolved to take the eaglets home and care for them until they were strong enough to thrive on their own. Back at his cabin, Harry created a cozy nest by the fireplace for the fragile eaglets, feeding and caring for them with unwavering dedication. The eagle stayed close, watching over him and occasionally emitting soft sounds of gratitude. Over the weeks, the chicks grew stronger, their downy feathers giving way to sleek plumage as they practiced flapping their wings, preparing for flight. Under Harry's care, the eagle's injured wing gradually healed, and he watched their progress with pride and joy. One sunny morning, Harry brought the eaglets outside, where they felt the fresh breeze for the first time. To his amazement, they fluttered their wings and lifted into the air, taking their first independent flight. The eagle joined them, soaring gracefully in a display of strength and freedom. As Harry watched them circle above, his heart swelled with both pride and bittersweet realization. Their time together had come to an end. The day of farewell came, and Harry tearfully watched the eagle and its chicks take flight, their bond forever etched in his heart. Their departure lifted his loneliness, inspiring him to write about their journey. Though wild, the eagle family returned often, bringing Harry joy and reminding him that even in loss, life creates connections that heal and bring purpose. Their soaring flight became a symbol of freedom, resilience, and new beginnings.